thanks for popping in. I hope that you find this video helpful. We're doing routes, client-side routes. If you find this useful, please like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified of the next video release. So let's jump right into it. Client-side routes using a React application. I'm going to be using Vite to start this up. If you're not familiar, I will post a link in the description to that video. Let's just call this routes, and I'm going to select a React application, and plain JavaScript is fine. We'll jump into our routes and install our modules, and that should take just a second. And then we also need to install npm install react router DOM, and that's the module we'll be using to build our routes. So with that, let's do an npm run dev and have Vite fire up that local host, and we'll pop that open in our browser and we can see we're up and running. React application powered by Vite. Sweet. So let's open this up in our IDE. I'm using Visual Studio Code. Feel free to use whatever you'd like. Let's open up our source. We can delete the assets. We don't need that. And inside of app, let's go ahead and delete. Let's delete everything except for an outer div. Whoops. And let's just put one h1 that says app. We'll delete the state out of there. We're not using state here. We're not using any of that. So let's save this, and let's also come into our CSS file, and let's delete everything out of here except for the root. Go ahead and save. Now let's check our browser, make sure that those changes took effect, and they did. So we're looking good. Hopefully everybody is able to follow along so far and no problems. If you do, feel free to head to my website consultingninja.tech and send me a message directly or comment below and I'll be happy to help. Alright, so let's get back in here. And inside of our app.jsx, we're going to need to import some pieces from our React Router DOM module we installed. So let's go ahead and import a browser router. And routes and route from React Router DOM. All right. And then let's get rid of all this. We don't need that test anymore. What we need to do is render our browser router component and then open it up a little bit. And then inside of here, we need our routes like this. Okay? Hopefully that has not provided any problems for you guys. Now, if we're building an application that has routes, we're probably going to need some sort of navigation. So let's go ahead and create a navigation component. Inside a source here, just go to new file and just call it nav. Make sure you're using an uppercase letter for the first letter because that signifies to React that it is in fact a component. And I like to label mine JSX because that's what they are. If you're using Visual Studio Code, you can type RFCE and then tab, and it will fill in the skeleton for you. Not sure if WebStorm or the other IDEs have that ability, but that is something nice that Visual Studio Code does have. All right, so in here, what do we need? Well, let's import a link component from React Router there, React Router DOM. And here, let's delete this. We'll leave the container div. And let's give this a class. We're going to need to style this just a tiny bit. Not going to get crazy with the styling. I want to focus on the routing. So let's just give this a class of nav, and then inside of here let's create a div, and in the div let's bust out that link component, and we need a to property on there, and that's the route that that the link will take us to. And for this one, let's keep it the home route, the base route, and let's call that home. And then let's just copy and paste this once and call this not home and not home. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. And then in our app.css, we're just going to add just a tiny bit of styling here, just to make this look a little bit better. So inside of nav, let's just do a display of grid, do a grid template columns of auto. Let's add a padding of 2 EM. Let's add a, well, that'll be good. And then let's grab our divs too and just add a tiny bit there. So inside of the class nav, we're going to grab the divs, and let's just do give them a margin of 2 EM, padding of 2 EM. Well, 2 might be too much. Let's just do 1. And let's give them a border of 2 pixels. Whoops, 2 pixels solid, and the FFF white. All right, let's save that. Now let's just take a peek and make sure. Well, before we take a peek, we have to actually import this. So back in our app.jsx file, let's go ahead and import that navigation component. So do import nav from /nav, and then in here, let's render that component above the routes. So nav, like this, it doesn't have any children, it just is a self-closing component. Everything's contained there. So let's go ahead and save that. Now let's check this out and see where we're at. Looks like we've got 2 buttons. Sweet, so there's our navigation component. Now we need routes to actually belong to those. So if you click on those right now, you're going to, you would change your, well, nothing would happen because there's no routes in here, really. So let's go ahead and create the components that are going to render when we click those links. So essentially the way that client-side routing works is that JavaScript just renders a different component and then works with the browser to call it something else. So inside a source, let's create a home.jsx. That will be our home component. And let's just add a h1 here that says home. We'll go ahead and put that text in there and save that. And then let's create one more, and we'll call this, you guessed it, not home.jsx, and we'll do the same thing. Let's just wrap that in a h1. Okay, so now we have our 2 different components that will render when we change routes. So now we need to include those in our routing component, which is in our app.jsx. So here's where we have our browser router, and then in between these opening and closing routes is where we need to put our individual route. So here we put a route, and you have to give this some props. Now what we need here is the path. Right, this one's going to be home, so we'll do slash, and we want it to match exactly, so we add the exact prop, and then the element that you're going to render when a user goes to that route. So for this one, it's going to be the home component, and everything is included there. The home does not have any children. And then we close off that route. So let's go ahead and copy this one. And here, this is going to be not home. And this is going to be not home. Okay, and now you guessed it, we need to import those or we're going to get an error. So let's import home from home and import not home from not home. Okay, hopefully everyone's getting this no problems. Let's go ahead and pull out our browser, and you can see immediately, since we start on the home directory, our home component is here. And if we navigate with our navigation component to not home, we now see the not home. And those are coming from our components. So inside of our home.jsx, you see we're rendering home. And in our not home, we're rendering not home. And so when we're clicking that link, your router component is taking you from one slash to the other, from your base directory to your not home, and it is rendering the opposite component or whichever component you're passing in here. All right, so there we have basic routing, client-side routes. I hope that you guys have found this helpful. Now, there are a couple of issues that come up with this, and I'm going to save those for another video, but I'll tell you two of the things that come up. One has to do with if you refresh your page. So our routes are defined by our JavaScript, right? The JavaScript here is what is handling these routes and rendering different components. So if someone were to try to go to www.whatever your application is hosted at /nothome, well, guess what? When their browser makes that request to your server, it is not going to know where to send you. Also, if you are navigating around and you try to use the back button, it also will not know where to send you. There is a fix for that. It is called a hash router, and I will show you that in a coming video. And also, another thing that happens if you have components that have lots of content and you scroll down and then change routes, and then go back to that route, your component will have be in that same spot, and there is a fix for that, and I will show that in a coming video as well. So stay tuned. I hope that you guys have found this helpful. If you did, please give a like and subscribe. Comment below with any topics you'd like me to cover. Head to my website, consultingninja.tech, and as always, have a great day.